family heritage can play a big part in sport, sometimes good and sometimes bad. You may need to pause for a minute to bring to mind some family names that continue on through the generations, but it probably won't take too long. The Pollocks in cricket come to mind for me, or even closer to home, which Marsh or McDermott might be the next to make it big in Australian cricket. In league, it seems that every year there's a new player coming through, seeking to forge their way in the footsteps of a famous dad, uncle or other relative. And basketball's a classic for it, with the Andrew and Lindsay Gaze combination standing out, where one not only followed the other on the playing arena, but they also partnered together as coach and player with great success. I'm guessing, though, that for many of you won't need to look outside your own situation to understand what we're talking about here. Perhaps in the sport you play, your family name looms large overhead. It precedes wherever you go and whatever you do. Hopefully it can be used as a positive, perhaps opening up opportunities and providing inspiration that others may not have. For many, though, it can be a burden, a weight that longs to be lifted. For people to view them as an individual and stop measuring them up against their mum or dad who competed before them. It can be a big thing to live up to. Can you imagine, though, living up to the reputation of having God as your father? Wow. Now that might seem like a big jump that's come out of left field there, but in fact it's central to the next part of the book of John that we're journeying through together. We've reached chapter 5 now, and it's all been happening, you could say. And this time around, we not only get to read other people's opinions and observe what Jesus does, we get to hear from the man himself about who he sees that he is. And it's an astounding passage of speech that leaves us in no doubt as to whom this man really is. Now you might recall from the last talk that Jesus has been travelling around Israel, and the latest thing in chapter 4 is that after speaking with the people in Samaria, by speaking a word, Jesus healed a sick child. At the start of chapter 5, we see Jesus continue to impact the lives of those he comes into contact with. Here, he heals a man who had been an invalid for 38 years. 38 years, sick, weak, unable to help himself. Now, Jesus changes his life. Not surprisingly, this causes a bit of a stir, particularly with those who thought that relating to God was all about rules and religion, and they didn't see Jesus following these. See, bizarrely, the people were more concerned because Jesus healed someone on the wrong day of the week, rather than rejoicing at the new life and freedom that the man had. Jesus' actions and words really riles these people. Jesus answers them by explaining that his actions in light of the fact that God was his Father. What a claim to make! And even more so, what a claim to try and live up to. And not just that though, the implication, as the people realise, is that by calling God his own Father, Jesus was making himself equal with God. Well, Jesus has quite a discussion with these people in the words that follow in John chapter 5. It's definitely worth a closer look. It's a key part in the whole book. And we're not going to go into all the detail here, but the section really does validate the claims Jesus makes to be God. And this section has big consequences, providing insight about both God the Father and his Son Jesus. It reminds us of the fact that God has come in flesh. He has reached down into our world in the form of a man Jesus. And if we want to see what God is like, look at Jesus. He's not just living up to the family name, he's a perfect representation. At the same time as we do look at Jesus, this part of the Bible reminds us of how seriously we should take him. He is God, and he cannot be ignored. He's also the one who judges. If you have a look at what it says in verse 23, that whoever does not honour the Son does not honour the Father who sent him. See, a rejection of Jesus reveals our position before God, and it's a perilous situation. The proper reaction is spelled out by Jesus in the following words, where he says that whoever hears my word and believes him who sent me has eternal life. He does not come into judgment, but has passed from death to life. Wow, that's laying it on the line pretty clearly, isn't it? The alternatives and the outcomes sit here before us. We're challenged to consider our response, a response with enormous significance. Do we honour Jesus and believe him for who he is? There's very good reason to do so. That Jesus has already demonstrated in the things that we've looked at in the book of John, and now here again in chapter 5, that is unlike any other, that he indeed is God. And now he's stated it clearly for us, confirming that he is the one. The very works I am doing, he says, bear witness about me that the Father has sent me. Before Jesus had even arrived, parts of the Bible were written before his time that bear witness about me, he says. Jesus is no letdown to the name he bears. He is worthy to be honoured, not ignored. There's still plenty more to come in John. Stand by for the following chapters and just what might happen with the inevitable head-on collision between God and the people who reject him.